This is the How Did We Get Here podcast with your host, Nancy Jackson.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Nancy again, and I welcome you to How Do We Get Here, the podcast. And we just finished looking at in the last podcast. It was part one of this series, and it's really the warning of 1917, about 100 years ago, that took place at Fatima. And I think we've explored it enough, although you could talk for days about Fatima because it was a huge event, even though a lot of it has been suppressed since it all happened in 1917. There are still people that have followed it and have been very serious about the warning that was given and the pleas that were made at that event. So, but I want to go on today to another part of this investigation that, because I'd like to know, what about the effects of modernism and communism on the United States and America and the rest of the world, because it's not we just need to explore it a little bit more. So today we are going to revisit the clips from Mark Mallett, the Canadian broadcaster, and tap into his information and observations. And following him, we'll also be talking or listening to Father Richard Heilman, who has some good reflections and recollections on what happened to him back in 1973. So we will tune into that coming up next.
Welcome, everybody. This is the U.S. Grace Force Podcast. I'm Doug Barry, along with my just now after Christmas amazing friend, Father Richard Heilman. And our final official guest for 2024, Mark Mallett. He's back with us.
What was the warning at Fatima? It was that Russia was going to spread its errors, the errors of Russia. And we know today what the errors of Russia are. That's Marxism, practical atheism, and so forth. These were the errors that were brought in by Lenin and then, really forcefully introduced by Stalin, spread throughout all of the USSR by bloodshed, by famine. Millions died under that. And then, of course, Mao brought this in China, and China still today is a kind of a quasi-capitalist communist regime, but I would say more communist. But Our Lady said that this would spread throughout the world. And we're seeing this today. And this is the hardest part for me as a watchman who's been screaming this out now for, I guess, since almost now 20 years, is that communism is spreading, but they're not using that word. The word they're using is the Great Reset, the Fourth Industrial Revolution. This is what it is. They're using climate change and the other health crisis that we went through and the new one that's just about to come. They're using this as a means to grab wealth, redistribute wealth, and impose a surveillance system in which every man, woman, and child can be surveilled and tracked and ID'd, and that all our buying and selling will have to happen through this digital ID, which will include our updated health status and so on. This isn't me speaking about conspiracy theory. This was passed by the G20 nations. This is being promoted on the UN's website. And we're at the verge of seeing this unfold. And I dare say that as we've been talking about at the beginning of the show, as we see people waking up in America, they're waking up in Canada and other places in the world where they're starting to see that these leftist ideologies are truly destructive. And I went into the historical roots of the United States and how Freemasonry in Christianity, from the very beginning of the founding of the United States, have been at a war with each other, and how the United States has ultimately been used to spread enlightened democracies throughout the world through a Masonic agenda. But that agenda has now used America, just as it says in Revelation, I think 18, how the harlot riding the beast hates the harlot. And now he's done with her. She's drunk on the blood of the saints. She's been used to spread idolatry and sexuality and all the sins throughout the world. And then we read how Babylon, this mystery Babylon, how it becomes the haunt of every demon, of every evil thing. And we see how America's borders have been opened up inexplicably. I'm certain that Biden isn't taking the orders from himself. He's getting them from what is being called a shadow government that Woodrow Wilson talked about. He talked about the shadow government. You guys call it the deep state, whatever you want to call it there.
Modernism promotes the loss of higher thought, a higher quality of thought. They leave some things out. They water down beliefs in the supernatural, and it's kind of an ideological subversion by withholding some facts and some information and to control your thoughts and replace it with the fictitious reality. And it's really a force bigger than modernism. And that's why I call it the collaborators. And they're all pushing in the same direction. And that's why I lump them together. And there are all these new terms. The globalists, you have the New World Order, you have Marxism, communism, Freemasonry, you have the Great Reset, that's another name for it. And they're pushing, there's this diabolical philosophy of atheism. Basically, they all are trying to push God out of the conversation and make, well, it's like ignoring God or saying that God doesn't even exist. And there's the old slogan, if there is no God, everything is permissible. And that includes treating people like objects. And when Jesus said that man is created in God's image, it has given human beings a dignity that they never had before in pagan societies and cultures. And people were just used and discarded. They had no innate value until Christianity came along. And it's only since Jesus came to give us a new way of living that he declared that we have value because we possess qualities that come from God, intellect and will, and free will at that. So anyway, Mary called it Russia's errors. And that was in 1917. And in 1919, communism was established and founded. And in 1919, communism made its way to the United States. And the goal of communism is to conquer the world into submission to a new world order, a new way of doing everything. And again, we go back to the other term, the Great Reset, or the Fourth Industrial Revolution. I mean, there's a million different terms for this. But their goal is really to destroy America because we are kind of the last holdout. And I mean, America has slid down into the ditch in the last 60, 70, or 80 years. Then the last part of this is I want to go back to the podcast again, the U.S. Grace Force podcast. And in this particular section, it's Father Richard Heilman who's going to give us another take on all of this. So let's listen to that now.
Yeah. So as I'm listening to you, and thank you, Mark, it's very enlightening. But as I was listening to you, I was thinking back to 1973, because you said it's about abortion and what was going on at that time. And I needed to get your take on this because I remain befuddled. But 1973, I'll never forget, the parish that I was at. There was, a beautiful sacred liturgy. And then I went into high school and pretty much the same. There was mass all the time, and there was confessions, there was devotions, there was statues. And in 1 year, that same year, the nuns' habits went like that. The sacred statues and images were stripped out. We never talked about confession. We had mass once a semester. It just seemed like there was a revolution against the spiritualness, or more deeply, the supernatural at that time. And again, the errors of Russia, it's atheism. It's a revolution against anything that religious, or more importantly, supernatural in our time. And it just seems like that has been where there was not only a great invasion right at the time that Roe v. Wade somehow got in. I don't think there was much pushback at all. There was a remnant that tried their best, I guess, but where was the universal pushback on that during that time? There wasn't. And it just seems like, and this is what I'd like your take on, Mark. It just seems like this was the way Satan did it, is he removed our armor, right? That's from Luke 11, I think it is, chapter 11. But he when a strong man guards his house, his possessions are saved. But, if one's stronger than he comes, he takes away his armor. And it just seems like that's the first move, takes away our belief in the supernatural power of God. Mark, it's been so easy for Satan in our historical time that we live in right now. And do you have hope that we can recover? I mean, look at the church right now. Anything that's more sacred, how you offer the mass and things like that is strictly verboten during this. I sit here and I go, I don't understand it. And I want to remain hopeful, but holy cow. Do you have, what's your take on that, Mark?
Well, I think you've summarized it beautifully, Father. I mean, modernism is really the disease that entered the church. And that's why you had back in 1903, Pope Pius X saying that this disease is apostasy from God. In fact, in 1903, he even said that the Antichrist, the son of perdition, may already be on the earth. I mean, that's how serious Pope Pius X saw things. So, I mean, by the time Vatican II rolled around, and a lot of people today are blaming Vatican II, but they don't understand the apostasy was well underway. Yeah, yep. I don't either. I just think the modernists just used that as a platform for their revolution, and the revolution is the right word. And they did. They came in, and you had at that point the cinema, you had the sexual revolution, you had a revolution going on in music that was also, Elvis Presley and his gyrating hips. All of this stuff was contributing to it. You had birth control on the scene. And what modernism did, you're right, Father, it drained the supernatural. You were already starting to hear things like the miracles of Jesus were just symbolic. They were just kind of more another parable.
Yeah.
And because of this, as our baptismal vows say, I renounce the glamour of Satan. Well, the glamour of sin was huge. And this glamour ultimately swept away a great portion of the faithful. I mean, we are arguably living right now in the midst of the great apostasy spoken of in Second Thessalonians.
I have to say that I agree with everything that Father Heilman said. And he described things that I was a personal witness to myself because I was young and very much involved in all of those things that he was discussing. I struggled with the same. There were a lot of changes in our Catholic faith. And it was this was after the Vatican Council, Second Vatican Council, which took place in the early 60s, 1962 to 1965 were the years of the Second Vatican Council. And it wasn't all, there were a lot of good things that came out of it, but there were also some people that took advantage of the Second Vatican Council. And it was through the modernists, them in the church, who really thought that they knew more than anybody else. And they tried to steer the church in a certain direction. And it's taken a real toll on the church. And honestly, I think that if I was going to summarize it, it's draining the supernatural out of the faith and canceling it, denying it. And I certainly object to that, reject it, and I believe in the divinity of Christ. He is the Savior of the world, and I am sticking with that. And that is my strongest belief, and I will not give that up. But there are a lot of people that have been, it's very hard to resist some of these subtle suggestions. And there have been all of these changes that have diminished our faith and have downplayed, diminished, or canceled the supernatural and the transcendent from our faith. And I think a lot of it was done to cater to other religions, to try to attract people because they thought there were some extreme things going on in the church, and they tried to, make it more palatable to other people of other faiths. But it actually has had the opposite effect. And there have been huge losses within the church ever since then. And as Father Heilman was talking, he was a witness to it too, and was very much tuned into it. So anyway, I just I hope that this is helping. I think that my summary would be that draining the supernatural out of faith and draining the transcendent from our culture is a very bad thing for our society that is a Judeo-Christian, I would say a Greco-Roman Judeo-Christian culture. And to take all of that out is to like drain the life out of it. And we just can't have that. So anyway, that's it for what I've got today. And I hope that it clarifies some things that I haven't talked too long. But anyway, that's all I have for today. And I wish you the best. And I hope to see you at the next podcast. And by the way, if you like it, hit the like button and subscribe and spread the word and tell your friends about the program so we can get more viewers. Thanks so much, and I'll see you the next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the How Did We Get Here podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and share this episode with your friends and family. For more information and to connect with Nancy, email howdidwegethere1884@gmail.com.